Aside from the fact that I don't think in terms of, quote, failure anymore, I think the sentiment is about right. If you're pushing to failure on a nitro leg press or a vertical chest press, even if you're just pushing to a maximum or high effort, even if you lose it, by definition, those 5-star exercises are hard to hurt yourself on. They're safer as opposed to failing with a barbell bench press or a barbell squat. I've just gotten away from the failure nomenclature. It hints at the question of why you exercise. If you are exercising because you're, treating it as a personal challenge to bench press 300 pounds or do 100 kettlebell swings or whatever, or to compete in some things, you're going to lapse into crazy joint wrecking stuff, right? Or if you aspire to be Arnold and training sensibly isn't giving you what you want, you kind of owe it to yourself to try what he was doing just to prove to yourself whether it works or not, which may involve crazy joint wrecking stuff. So the presumption I always make is that the person is exercising to benefit their body. Exercise to benefit your body, and what result you get, and you're happy with that. If someone I've seen some bodybuilding competitors who literally look like they were drawn from a comic book, superhero. If that's what you aspire to, then joint-friendly fitness is quite irrelevant.
Welcome to another episode brought to you by Imagine Strength, the future of safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training equipment. Are you a HIT studio owner looking for equipment that's not just top-notch, but also tailored to your specific needs? Imagine Strength is your answer. Inspired by the legendary Arthur Jones, Imagine Strength is revolutionizing the HIT industry with their state-of-the-art yet affordable equipment. Their team doesn't just sell HIT equipment, they live and breathe it. I've personally experienced their gear at the Resistance Exercise Conference, and let me tell you, it was an intense workout that I won't soon forget, in the best way possible, of course. So why choose Imagine Strength? Number one, they provide customized solutions for HIT studios. Number two, they have budget-friendly yet high-performance designs. And number three, they're committed to innovation and excellence in high-intensity training specifically. Founder Jeff Turner and his dedicated team are on a mission to make HIT accessible to everyone. Getting started is easy. Number one, visit imaginestrength.com. Number two, consult with their expert team. And number three, choose the equipment that will skyrocket your business. Don't wait. Head over to imaginestrength.com and elevate your HIT studio today with Imagine Strength. Lawrence Snell here, and welcome back to High Intensity Business, your one-stop shop for elevating your HIT business and fueling your passion for high-intensity training. This is episode 441, and this is with Bill DeSimone. Bill is an ACE-certified health coach, senior fitness specialist, and owner of Optimal Exercise in Cranbury, New Jersey, and has certifications in functional anatomy, functional fitness, and orthopedic exercise. He's been training people since 1983, and is also the author of Moment Arm Exercise, Congruent Exercise, and his latest masterpiece, Joint-Friendly Fitness. Now, Bill and I have recently connected on a couple of podcasts where we've been exploring joint-friendly fitness and his time in personal training and drawing wisdom and lessons from that time. And through that, we've been sort of getting a lot of questions from listeners. And Bill's received a lot of questions over the years. And we thought we would spend some time actually trying to answer some of those questions today in this podcast. So I'm quite excited to do this. And so with that said, I'm actually going to bring up first, welcome, Bill. Great to see you again, as always.
Hello, Lawrence.
So let's bring up these questions. Just give me a second here. So Bill, I'm looking at some of the questions that were submitted. Should we kick off with Sculpted Marble 6600, which I believe is Mark Campbell. It might be, I could be getting that completely wrong. So Mark, you can correct me. But do you want to kick off this question? Shall I read it and then you can answer it? We'll just go that way.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So Mark is referring to the star rating in joint-friendly fitness, which is how a lot of the exercises are organized in the book. He says you could take the star rating of a given exercise as an indication of how close to failure you can get and still be safe and biomechanically sound. The higher the star rating, the closer to failure you can push. What are your thoughts about that, Bill?
Aside from the fact that I don't think in terms of, quote, failure anymore, but I think the sentiment is about right. If you're pushing to failure on a nitro leg press or a vertical chest press, if or even if you're just pushing to a maximum or high effort, even if you lose it, by definition, those 5-star exercises are hard to hurt yourself on. They're safer, as opposed to failing with a barbell bench press or a barbell squat. So I think that's probably a good shorthand, a good like what they call a heuristic.
Indeed. Good word for that. Yeah. Yeah. Any more thoughts, or is that, I mean, you said it, you answered that well, but
Well, I've just gotten away from the failure
yeah.
nomenclature, so to speak.
And why is that again?
Because generally in sports medicine stuff, and we are talking about human joints, that it all applies. Failure means you've ruptured a tendon or you've torn a muscle, so rather than have a separate, nomenclature aside, what I've seen when people try to train to failure is all the form breakdowns that get to the point where the weight no longer moves. So their prime movers are done, and then they lose posture and they contort themselves and they grit their teeth and they shift their shoulder girdle for the sake of getting to the point where the weight stops moving, as opposed to maintaining your posture, keeping your form, and stopping when the prime mover stops moving. Which I don't know if it's a subtle difference or not, because if I train to failure, where movement stops, not only is the weight stopped moving, but I've kept my posture the same. So I'm not, again, on a chest press, I'm not shrugging my shoulders, I'm not arching my back, I'm not heaving, I'm not inhaling and exhaling my chest beyond, exaggerated. So even if I was okay with the words, my definition of failure would be a lot stricter than, let me put it this way, what I used to do as a younger man, where my idea of failure was, no matter how much I contorted myself, broke form or whatever, the set didn't end. The set only ended when the weight stopped moving. So it's, I don't know if it's a subtle difference. If you observe it, it's not subtle. Like in words, it's a subtle difference, but if you observe it, it's not subtle. So again, nomenclature aside, all of the things that go with the attempt to train to failure, I at this point, I think are probably a step in the wrong direction as far as your joint health goes.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great observation by this person, though, because it's just perhaps, to put failure aside, it's just saying, hey, you could probably work these particular movements with greater level of intensity.
Yes.
And still be safe. Yeah.
Right.
I like that way of looking at it. So moving on to the next one here. Donnie Hunt, loyal listener, always commenting. We appreciate you, Donnie. He's always great with questions and comments. I love the details. Also really like the message of not having to do crazy joint wrecking stuff to exercise. Obviously, again, guys, Donnie and Mark, hopefully I'm getting that right, are referring to the book Joint Friendly Fitness. And I'm actually going to go and run and grab a copy in a minute. But if you haven't got a copy, go and get one. Again, back to the question from Donnie, to talk about optimal ranges for muscle torque versus overstretching. The top of a ladder raise always going to be the mechanically weakest, quotes bad cam range. Awesome stuff. This is more of a comment. Sounds like you want to comment on that as well, Bill.
But some of this gets, like the first part of his comment about not having to do crazy joint wrecking stuff to exercise. Also, the question is, it hints at the question of why you exercise. If you are exercising because you're, treating it as a personal challenge to bench press 300 pounds or do 100 kettlebell swings or whatever, or to compete in some things, you're going to lapse into crazy joint wrecking stuff, right? Or if you aspire to be, I couldn't tell you a current bodybuilder's name, but let's just say Arnold, right? Just say Arnold, because I think everybody knows who Arnold was.
Who?
If you aspire to be Arnold and training sensibly isn't giving you what you want, you kind of owe it to yourself to try what he was doing just to prove to yourself whether it works or not, which may involve crazy joint wrecking stuff. So the presumption I always make is that the person is exercising to benefit their body. Exercise to benefit your body, and what result you get, and you're happy with that. But again, if someone like, I've inadvertently seen some current bodybuilding competitors who literally look like they were drawn from a comic book, superhero with the proportions. If that's what you aspire to, then joint friendly fitness is quite irrelevant.
I see what you've done here, Bill. You snuck in this is more like a case study, isn't it? You snuck in a little case study for the book here.
Well,
it's good though.
The problem with exercise discussions, especially on social media, is context.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to establish the context, right? Well, I personally think the only exercise that should be legally allowed is joint friendly fitness. I do understand that other activities appeal to people for a different reason, and they may lump it under the broad category of exercise. And so if that's what you aspire to, you owe it to yourself to try it. I've tried them and I'm done with it. But I do understand there's a certain experience or maturity, whatever, that comes in realizing that, okay, I'm never going to look like Mike Mentzer. Stop training that way. So,
well, can you just expand on that a second? So training what way? I thought Mike Mentzer trained pretty safe, no? Or was he pushing that failure envelope, what you were saying earlier about form? I mean, I can't remember, to be honest, Mike's training and form and style, etc. in detail right now.
Well, when I finally saw a video of Mentzer actually training, his form might have been very strict compared to his contemporaries, but compared to super slow, compared to how I trained, compared to my interpretation of his words, it was sloppy. Now, again, compared to other bodybuilders at the time, it was probably pretty under control. But I also, a quote of his, and granted, I read it in a magazine, so you don't really know if it's true, was that after the 1980 Olympia, he said, "I'll never put myself through that torture again." And in an example of dichotomous thinking, he then apparently never trained again.
All right. Wow.
So if yes, if your option,
because he could have been talking about rice and chicken, right?
Well, but if your view of exercise is it has to be torture to get there, I don't know that I'm willing to do that. I think I don't think it's all or nothing. It's not Mr. Olympia or I don't train. So,
of course.
But however, in 1980, a lot of what I'm saying comes from having the experience and seeing what worked, what didn't, what's credible, what's not. But I do understand if someone's 25 years old and aspires to that, why the long-term care of their joints is not as high a priority as trying to mimic that.
Side note on this, that's a fascinating topic to me, is this idea of, depending on where people are in their life, they have different priorities. They feel when they're super young, they feel invincible. They think they can do anything. And to a degree, they can do a lot of things and not get injured, or if they do get injured, they recover much faster, etc. And obviously that changes later on in life. Do you have many conversations with young people about this type of thing? And do you expend much energy trying to convince them otherwise or not these days?
No, I tend to I tend to look for receptive audiences.
Mhm. Smart.
So for instance, when we go to rec, right? Generally, that's the Discover Strength crowd has their own, paradigm, shtick, whatever you want to call it. But generally, that's a receptive audience. If I go to a club industry convention or an SCA convention, generally an unreceptive audience.
Mm. That says a lot.
Yeah. So the broader exercise field, like if where it's very influencing, they want to be cutting edge as far as their dance classes, their HIIT classes, their clothes, their hair, their tanning. They have absolutely no interest in joint friendly issues whatsoever. Maybe when they hit 40 and they start tearing things. So I don't try to, this actually leads to an interesting marketing discussion, but I don't try to convince people the opposite of where they're at. I spend my effort looking to a more receptive audience.
Yeah. Totally get that.
I just had a conversation with Tim Ryan, and because I happen to be in Chicago, so I visited his studio.
Nice.
And he mentioned something about, when you're marketing or promoting and you lose a prospect to a boot camp or to a kettlebell class or something. And my comment to him was, but you didn't really lose that prospect. They were not receptive to what you have to offer. The point of marketing is to get however many exposures to find that receptive person, not to try to get 100%, because you can't get 100%.
Well, I mean, go ahead. Yep. Sorry.
And especially with this, people don't have the vocabulary. This is, the high intensity influenced style of exercise. Minimal times a week, brief workouts, meaningful exercise as opposed to just a beating. This is so under the radar that people don't have the non-exercisers don't have the vocabulary to know this is what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to put what you do out there for that light bulb to pop up in someone's head who says, gee, I really want to get in shape, but do I really want to slam tires and slam sledgehammers or sprint and jump? And do I really want to do that? They don't have the vocabulary to say, no, I want a place where it's under control and it's meaningful and it's 1 or 2 times a week and I can get on with my day. They don't have that vocabulary.
Or awareness of the concept or anything. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's just the whole Henry Ford thing. If you asked what people wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? It's that whole, it's right. The same, right?
Because they don't have the vocabulary. So, so that was with your question about, do I try to convince young people? On the other hand, by the way, I don't have to convince the interns, because coming out of their exercise science major, which is predominantly science-based, not practical-based, they look at what I do and they just say, okay, like they're not coming at it from the health club world or the fitness world where things have to be flashy. They're coming at it from the science. And since I've used the textbooks they use as my references, there's nothing to convince them of. They just say, okay.
It's already quite congruent. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of Mike Mentzer, that is him on the back.
I love that picture. That's pretty cool.
I do have a certain amount of nostalgia, even if the details of what he wrote or advocated, I've gotten away from. But there's certainly a nostalgia for that time.
So Bill, enough of my questions. It's not about me, is it? We should get back to the listener questions, shouldn't we?
Okay.
So we had some fascinating points and questions by Scott Beggs, who actually sent in sent Bill and I myself pictures of the book highlighted to death.
Sure.
And I loved your response. So Scott wrote this long email to, well, medium length email to Bill and I about his understanding of Bill's review of the whole cardio topic. And Bill just wrote back in like one line, "This is exactly how my book was designed to be used."
Highlights
is
and
great.
arrows and circles and comments. Yeah, that's right.
And I appreciated Scott pointing that out, because then I went straight to the book and read that bit myself. And yeah, it's a fascinating topic. Just to give a bit of context, I think I was literally texting someone this morning and I was saying, it's like almost like, this is not entirely accurate, but it's almost like my own fitness journey has gone full circle, right? Like when I used to work out way back in the day when I was late teens, sort of, 2021, I would work out all the time, right? So I'd run all the time, play basketball, strength train 3 times a week. So I was always doing something every day, sometimes twice a day. And then I come across Body by Science, and and this is not Doug's fault or anyone in particular, but I just became I think a lot of people do when they discover HIIT, is they do become perhaps quite dogmatic and blind, blinkered. And I literally reverted to just reduced all the exercise down to 1 15-minute workout per week. And I was super strict about that. Like I wouldn't do any more, and I would do exactly what was prescribed, etc. And then I play basketball once a week, and that was it. And I sort of celebrated that. Oh, I do so little. I'm so great. Look at me, And I never ran and all this kind of thing. Yeah. And now I'm actually, obviously people have heard on the podcast, I've been exploring, do other activities have a place in a kind of holistic solution for health, steady state activity, high intensity interval training. Obviously I've had, Bryce and Skylar on the show talking about this, various people. And yeah, anyway, we'll get into this in a minute, but I literally went for a run today. I went for a run today for 20 minutes, low intensity, not super crazy, probably like zone 2 heart rate, that type of thing.
You heathen. You heathen. Burn you at the stake.
I know. Shocking, right? Remove me from Hit Mountain or whatever it is. And and look, I felt great. I I came in, I felt like awesome. So I don't mind doing that stuff. And obviously it's not full circle. Like, it's not like I've gone back to doing all the stuff I used to do. I now have obviously slightly more wisdom, I like to think, and I make better choices in terms of my strength workouts and the type of steady state stuff I do, and how often I do it and at what intensity and my form, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just more kind of like thoughtful about it, but it just makes you feel alive. And sometimes I can sit there, sorry, one more point is Bill, and then I'll turn over to you. But I was having a coffee with someone recently, and we sat there, and I was sitting with him, and I was like, and he's a HIIT guy, he's read Body by Science, etc., and he trains with us at our studio here, Optima Strength in Galway. And I was saying to him about the science around aerobic, anaerobic, okay, you got to get overload the heart, etc., with this activity. And he just looked at me and he was like, "Dude, it just feels awesome to run, man. Don't need to talk, know all this stuff. You don't need to justify it. If you really enjoy running down the street and using your body or doing fill in the blank activity, as long as it's not totally reckless, right? Just do it." And I was like, fair enough. I don't know. I just thought that was quite profound, that he didn't need all the scientific justification for designing the optimal regime. He's like, look, these are a few activities I really enjoy doing, and therefore I'm going to do them. Anyway, that's my piece. So go ahead.
You have given me a target-rich environment to talk about. So,
oh, great. Okay, shoot far away.
Let me try to narrow it down a little bit. Let's see. So,
and then we can segue into Scott's question.
Scott, who? No, kidding, because he did write a review. So thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
One of the things that happens with HIIT is the group think and the dichotomous thinking, right? So, so context matters, right? If you're Doug McGuff and you're a very busy emergency room technician, physician, maybe you only have the energy and the headspace for 1 15-minute workout a week, right? But if that's not you, and maybe if that's your life and you have a young family and all, doing more than that is going to be harmful and detrimental um, to your mood, to your well-being. It gets in the way.
Yeah, if you're not sleeping, etc. Yeah, yeah.
But context does matter. And somehow the HIT group think. So, for instance, in the 70s, the Jones HIT type writing was, look how efficient we made weight training, so you have more time to practice. And then around the 90s, Hutchins with his super slow stuff, where he actively disparaged any form of cardio training and any form of stretching, right? Where he'd sell T-shirts with the no sign through a cardio or through aerobics, sort of, as if your options were train for a marathon, be a circus contortionist, or strength train. Well, I would agree with that. Training for a marathon would probably kill me.
All right.
Orthopedically, I mean, trying to be a circus contortionist would kill me. But that doesn't mean doing a modest 20-minute run or doing a half-hour steady state on a bike, or God forbid doing a 5K or a triathlon is that necessarily detrimental. And it does become a question of priority, right? I mean, if you're like Roger Schwab is fond of saying, because when he had mainline Nautilus, mainline in Bryn Mawr, he had other modalities there as well as a Nautilus museum, in effect. And he used to say, well, as long as it doesn't interfere with your strength workout, do whatever you want. And I would take that one step further, which is, if the strength workout isn't your priority, then, you know, if you have it in your head to do a triathlon, and so a lot of your efforts going towards swimming practice and running practice and conditioning to do that, and you still want to keep your hand in on strength training, well, then don't worry about training to failure or extra intensity techniques. You know, you have priorities at different times of life. And somehow the hype to promote what we do seems to have displaced the idea of context of exercise for the whole person. So for instance, I don't sell a half hour of steady state in my studio. I sell one-to-one strength training and assisted stretching. And we do a cardio warm-up. But if somebody says, I'm thinking of doing a 5K, is this enough? No, you have to go run. Or I like bike riding. Go ahead, ride your bike. So there's a difference between what I sell and what the answer to the question is, what should I do for exercise? And somehow, with social media and everything has to be a blurb and everything has to be an extreme position, that's gotten a bit, it seems to be a bit murky, right? I mean, even Luke Carlson and the Discover Strength people, you are not doing half marathons if your only exercise is one weight workout a week. You are clearly training for track. James Fisher, doing triathlons, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your own podcast. Sure, I strength train once a week, but I do this other stuff to do that. So, again, sometimes the HIT groupthink gets in the way of the overall physical culture of being alive.
Right. That's a good way of putting it.
And again, that dichotomous thinking, right? You can stretch without attempting to be a circus contortionist, right? You can do, quote, cardio without practicing for a marathon. It's not either or. There are degrees of involvement.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Now getting back to Scott here. So in his email, he also mentioned, way back in Project Total Conditioning, the Westpoint cadets demonstrated that 3 full body workouts conferred impressive cardio benefits. From this piece of evidence, others in HIT have suggested that supplemental cardio is not needed even if they work out as little as twice a week. Yes. Others in HIT. Yes. So again, the HIT group thinks that insists on evidence-based relies on one project, one study from the mid 70s to justify not doing cardio. And Westpoint cadets. Do you know what Westpoint is? It's the military academy in the United States. Westpoint cadets who tend to be, between 18 and 22 years old, highly motivated, highly susceptible to being ordered to do stuff. The interesting thing about relying on that as your evidence is that the US military since then goes through every fitness system known imaginable, and including CrossFit, right? There's just, the military academy, they constantly go through martial arts systems. They constantly go through fitness systems. Nothing is static with them. They're always doing something new. I'll assume to keep the cadets and the troops motivated. But let's put it this way, if your option is 0 exercise and 1 or 2 strength training workout, 1 or 2 high intensity influence workouts a week, compared to 0 exercise, you probably will get you will get impressive cardio benefits. Is that the only way to get those benefits? No. Would the cardio benefits be more if you did steady state or interval type training? Probably, but it depends on who you're studying, right? If you take someone who's been exercising 50 years, me, Roger, Darden, we're probably tapped out. We've probably squeezed out every measurable bit of improvement that we can. We've been training 50 years, or those guys are older than me. So you take someone who's untrained or trained 5 years, you can probably squeeze out more recordable improvement. So the details of who's in the study matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I say that fully admitting I am not an academic guy. So
just to stillman a little bit, was it the point that, the HIT community is just that supplemental cardio exercise not needed, even if they work out as little as twice or once a week. There's obviously more research than just this project that supports, you've got the study, I just brought it up there, was a review. Resistance training to momentary muscular failure improves cardiovascular fitness in humans. A review of acute physiological responses and chronic physiological adaptations. This was, James and James, Fisher and Steele, Stuart Bruce Lowe, but also Doug McGuff is cited too as an author. This is one, again, that I think gets used quite a lot to support the idea that HIT's kind of all you need to, improve cardiovascular fitness. But it doesn't say, again, I'm not just brought up the study. I'm not going to read the whole thing right now. But from memory, it doesn't, prove the idea that it's optimal. And that's kind of what we're saying here, is that if you want to get actually, optimal benefits, health benefits, maybe there is a case for having aerobic or cardio or steady state activity as well.
But also, who is this argument with?
Well, I think the idea is that a lot of I would argue purist here, I say that and I get told that's me, and I don't really think it is, would argue that you don't. I mean, I've done podcasts with people recently this year, several, where they feel that cardio is completely redundant, completely unnecessary. And I'm arguing against that potentially.
Okay, fine.
But I'm trying to stillman it. I'm trying to be, reasonable about it.
Well, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But on an individual, now my personal interest is not in the big lofty battle of studies or global meaning. My interest is in the individual person in front of me's challenge with exercise, with getting or staying in shape, or my own as I've gotten older and firsthand experience age-related changes to the joints. So if somebody simply says, okay, listen, great, I'm glad that training to the point where you want to vomit once a week is all the exercise I need. I'm not doing it. Now, as a professional trainer, what am I going to do? What are you going to do? Fall on that sword for some principle?
Sure.
I'm not going to do that. Is there another way of doing it? Yeah. So again, if for the sake of having a, quasi-academic argument, it's an interesting point to make. And it's interesting data in the scheme of things, but all it really does is saying, listen, you have options. If this is your goal, you have options. The job of the individual personal trainer is for that individual client in front of me, what's the option that's going to work for them?
Mm-hmm.
And if that means weight training for the upper body and using a bike for the lower body with some intervals, okay. If that means strictly weight training, great. That the nature of that argument doesn't interest me at all because I'm trying to figure out what works.
Today's episode is sponsored by Imagine Strength, the game changer in safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training machines. When it comes to HIT, Imagine Strength is your go-to for intelligently designed, efficient, and affordable equipment. Their team is passionate about HIT, and it shows in every piece they craft. So why are Imagine Strength the right choice? Number one, they tailor-make their equipment for HIT studios. Number two, they provide cost-effective solutions for your business. And number three, they are committed to ongoing innovation and refinement. Ready to take your HIT business to the next level? Visit imaginestrength.com to discuss your needs and find the perfect gear for your studio. Join the HIT revolution of Imagine Strength and transform your workout experience today. I understand that, but I think what we're doing here in this particular conversation is, and from Scott's perspective, is we're addressing the listeners who will do whatever it takes to optimize their health, right? So they're not they're not our clients. These are people who are like, look, I want to know I've got ample time, whatever. What is the optimal configuration? Strength training, etc. That's the question. Yeah, so that's the question we're all trying to answer.
So that's a different context.
Sure.
And I think the answer is a high intensity influence weight workout once or twice a week, plus steady state multiple times a week.
Beautiful.
Ellington Darden, in his recent books, especially the Body Fat Breakthrough, one negative emphasized weight workout a week and a half hour of walking after dinner 6-7 nights a week.
That's what he says, is it? Interesting.
Yeah. Fred Hahn.
Yeah.
Strength train once or twice a week, walk everywhere. Which is
okay, but they're talking about walking. They're not talking about higher levels of steady state activity than just walking.
Well, but the point is more physical activity.
I see. And Doug would agree with this, wouldn't he? McGuff would probably align with that. Yeah.
I haven't kept current with Doug, but at one time he would do bicycle motocross, right? Which
and he would still. Yeah,
it's a skill in a sport, but it is still non-high intensity weight training to contribute to his overall conditioning. Yeah. Again, Luke and the Discover track team. So really, so if that's the question is yes, 1 or 2 weight training workouts a week, plus some form of rhythmic, big muscle, steady activity.
Do you want to, so this really gets to the heart of Scott's question. He says, could Bill comment on the difference between resistance and steady state exercise on the heart? So you talk about this really eloquently in the book, but could you just give us just comment on that and give us a sneak peek from the book on this?
So
I'm going to get the book while you're talking.
An elevated heart rate. I got the book right here. Anyway, I'll just talk. I'm just going to vamp while Lawrence is finding the book. So
I've got the book. I'm coming.
An elevated heart rate by itself isn't the same thing. So when your heart rate elevates from weight training, is because the blood has pooled into working muscle. It's not returning to the heart as quickly or in the same volume. So the heart beats faster to try to draw the blood back to the heart. It's like going 60 miles an hour on a near empty tank of gas. You're still doing 60 miles an hour. It's just not as efficient as when the tank is full. With steady state type exercise, the heart rate's elevated because the legs are pumping the blood back to the heart at a faster rate and more volume. So in that case, the elevated heart rate is working against the resistance of the blood in the heart. Now, that's my simplistic way of understanding it for myself. There's far more physiology to it. I use the ACE personal trainer manuals, the FCA personal training manuals, but the interns say, yeah, that's what's in the exercise physiology textbooks now as well. That is the venous return. The venous return is the resistance to the heart. It's not just a question of a high heart rate creating the cardio benefits. Yeah. Now, Scott also mentions how his resting heart rate went down, which is generally considered a marker of a healthy heart.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think, I don't know if you saw, but last night he sent an email about leg pressing in this regard.
Yeah, it was kind of like repeating a similar email. I felt that he said the same as the previous email, but yeah, in response to my question email.
But so
yeah.
Now leg exercises, leg pressing, freehand squats, say, that's probably, one of the recent ACE textbooks breaks cardio down into 3 groups. 1 is ergometers. 2 is like free body exercise. And 3 is sports. And so the most easily controlled is on ergometers, right? But the free body exercise, whether it's a dance class or calisthenics class or freehand squatting and like high rep leg pressing would count for this. That also works. It's just a little more challenging to control than being on an ergometer. And then the last is to use sports practice to condition. And again, that if your priority is mastering the sport skill and you do it enough times, the conditioning will come. It's just going to be a little less controlled. So,
you want to give us I mean, John, I actually had one question before I do want to get to like maybe a quick blueprint, if you will, maybe straight out of the book in terms of safe, productive, steady state protocol. But one of the points you say, and I actually discussed this a little bit with Jürgen Giesing recently on the podcast, but we didn't really elaborate. But you talked, because he said the same thing. You talked about how it enhances capillarization. God, I can't speak today.
Capillarization.
Right. It's enhanced by steady state exercise, helps the body deal with byproducts of higher intensity anaerobic work.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did.
I said
straight
that?
out of the book. Well,
okay.
I'm gonna double check now. This is the problem when you write a book, right? You can't remember everything.
Well, after I've written it, I put it out of my head.
That's like when I do podcasts, Bill. Yeah, you said here the capillarization. So I said it right then. That comes from a steady state activity helps your body deal with the byproducts of the higher intensity anaerobic work.
Okay.
Would you correct that in retrospect, or no? Does that make sense? No. And can you? I don't know if you know this, but could you explain to me like why that is? Because I just confused as to why steady state has an advantage at doing that over high intensity strength training. Because I've always felt that I always understood that strength training did that as well.
To a degree,
right?
Okay, so all of this stuff. So when we're going to talk in absolutes because it's easier to understand. But the real answer is to a degree. Again, an untrained person starts strength training, they're going to get some capillarization. At a certain point, that same person, if they go from leg pressing to failure to riding a bike steady state is going to get more capillarization. Now, can you count it? No, but it's just sort of you're kind of extrapolating the basic thing. And the reason why I think you get somewhat limited with strength training is, at a certain point, whether you call it training to failure or maximum reps or not, there's so much. So for instance, have you experienced, you do a set of curls as hard as you're going to do them. You don't get pumped right away. It takes a few seconds.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I hate
it takes a few
curls so
seconds
much.
for the pump to settle in.
It's probably why my biceps small.
But it's there. No, but I'm saying when you
Thanks, Bill.
When you train Nautilus style, I'll just say HIT to not.
Yeah.
When you train HIT style, there's an almost maximal tension in the muscle where the blood flow is, it's not as pronounced, as opposed to training in a more pumping style where you, instead of being, steady tension up, steady tension down, it's up, down, up, down, up, down. And the pump seems to flow, the blood flow is a little easier that way. If you're walking uphill, if you're riding a bike, if you're swimming, that's more of the pump dynamic than it is slow up and down. So you're probably never going to develop that level of tension doing cardio, so the blood has a chance to flow and encourage the capillarization.
I see.
Again, we're talking about questions of degree. You take an untrained person, whatever they do is going to increase it. And then also you take someone who's trained a lifetime, probably nothing you do is going to increase it. You're probably going to maintain it. But in very broad terms, that's how it would work.
Interesting.
That's my interpretation of how it would work.
No, that's really cool. So this capillarization, we're saying it right. Where do you think that occurs? Everywhere? So peripherally and like centrally, or where are we thinking that happens?
I couldn't even guess.
Okay. All right.
Couldn't even guess. You mean within the muscle? So for instance, do you have a Schwinn upper body ergometer?
I don't, but I know what you're referring to.
It's like a bike for the arms.
Yeah. Like a
yes.
Mm-hmm.
I get off that, I'm pumped like a balloon.
Right.
Like almost instantly while I'm doing.
Is that why you always do it just before coming onto a podcast? Is that?
Oh, no, I just do push-ups outside of the.
Right.
I just jump on the floor. So on that Schwinn Airdyne, you pump like a balloon because every muscle you're using isn't completely tense. There has to be some give because you're actively moving it. So I'll assume it's in the belly of the muscle. I couldn't even guess where that's happened.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Sort of a line of inquiry, I guess. And I guess just to kind of, let me see, let's make sure I think we've addressed most of what Scott said. But I just wanted also to kind of wrap this little bit up by asking you for, I guess, a quick, heuristic, if you want to use that one again, blueprint for, or maybe just a blueprint or example of one for a safe, productive, steady state protocol. What does that look like? I know you've got some stuff in the book. Maybe you could pull straight from the book.
So I've the standard protocol is to check your heart rate versus the heart rate charts, standard. But there's also a track coach named Phil Naffatone who basically says use 180 minus your age. And I'm really cutting he elaborates a little bit more. So use 180 minus your age, train at that for whatever time you have.
What would be optimal? Just curious, in his opinion.
Well, I don't know about
time
his
wise?
opinion. I know, for instance, ACSM for the longest time suggested 3 to 5 times a week, 15 to 60 minutes an hour, 60 minutes of workout.
15
So
to 60.
15 minutes to 60. So
Got
there's
it.
a wide range of what's acceptable, basically.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So it really becomes a question of what you will do. So for instance, if you do a 15-minute weight workout and then go for a 15 or 20-minute run afterwards, that's fine. At some point, now, you could probably do that forever and continue to benefit. If ambition gets a hold of you and you want to do a 5K, you're going to have to be able to run for 30 to 45 minutes. So you tailor it based on what you want to do.
Right.
But as a quick, where would I start? I would say 20-minute steady state after your weight workout.
Mhm.
Unless you realize after your weight workout, you don't want to do any more exercise.
Which
Then
is
do it first.
totally understandable.
First, then do it first to make sure you do it.
Yeah.
So, and again, it could be a walk, right? If you walk fast, if you walk up hills, your heart rate will elevate, and it's going to be a lot easier on your joints than plodding. Like if you're not a graceful runner. So you pick the one you will do, right? If there's a bike ergometer there, and if it's in front of a TV set, you can watch a half-hour episode of something at a steady state. You know, I don't think there's a right or wrong. There's what the person will do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say up to a half hour. When you get past a half hour, I think the general thinking is that you're training for something other than health benefits.
Okay.
You're training for a sports performance.
Yeah. Got it.
So
Fascinating. I have a simple heuristic I've been using, and this is going to sound probably so simple to some people and just almost to the point where it's pointless saying it. But I've got enough, I guess, flexibility now in my schedule where pretty much every day at lunchtime, I could probably, I've been sort of blocking out like 1 hour, sort of 90 minutes to exercise, shower, and then have something to eat. Because I normally won't shower first thing. I normally do a whole bunch of work in the morning. And hopefully not see people so they don't think I'm smelly. And so what I do in that period is I just pick whatever exercise I think is appropriate. So I still do my 2 strength workouts a week. Well, say 2, more like probably 1.5. If I'm feeling sick, I'll still do something, but it'll be really, really low intensity, like walking the dog or going for a walk outside, but it has to be something, right? It could just be like Skylar's been sharing these, and I'll put a link in the show notes, these kin stretch videos, which are more for like mobility. And don't have to get into detail on that right now, whether that's, how beneficial that is or not, but like, it's just moving the body. It's kind of like similar to kind of yoga, I guess. I don't know if you're familiar with that approach, Bill.
I'm not, but I am familiar with yoga. I'm like 20, 30 years older than you guys, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm 36.
So this is, all right, so I'm 65.
Okay.
So, I think this is a normal, by the way, life cycle.
Yeah, right.
I'm more interested in just being able to move and, 1 brutal workout a week or 4 brutal workouts a week. It sounds great in your early 20s because I'm
right. Yeah.
Mentzer.
Yeah.
Then you realize, stuff's starting to hurt. And I just want to enjoy what I'm doing as well. And there's a lot of other things I can do physically that don't deplete me. I feel better after doing them. It's just a question of how do I schedule them. So,
yeah, I also feel like a lot of my decision making is based on the fact that, oh, hang on, if I get injured, that's a real inconvenience these days, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it just becomes a lot more difficult to manage that whole situation. I mean, lifting the kids, which is still a regular thing, driving them places, doing stuff, picking stuff up after them, keeping on top of the house management, all that stuff, right? It's just that is a huge filter for decisions for what to do exercise wise as well. And obviously age plays into that too, getting older. But so like, again, going back to choices, and then like today I did like a little bit more vigorous, but not really that vigorous jog just for like 20 minutes around the block. And I'm going to incorporate things like this. I live right by the ocean. So I'm going to start doing some cold water swimming every now and again as
Oh,
well.
beautiful.
A little
That's beautiful.
right. Yeah. I live like where I live in Galway is obviously the weather's a bit testing. There's a lot of rain and wind, but it's also such a beautiful place. And I'm literally 30 minutes from the sea. So, 30 minutes walking, and the other thing is, there's a basketball hoop right at the start of right at the front of my house where a neighbor has, so I can go and just shoot hoops. Again, that's another thing I can do, but I probably won't go back to doing five-a-side competitive basketball. You and I have spoken about that at length, right? For
Especially
obvious reasons.
Especially if the James ruptures.
Right. It's actually, James has put me off that completely now. We're actually catching up soon to check in on how he's getting on, and I think he's due surgery soon, I believe. Anyway, so that's it's. I guess I'm just trying to help, like, people listening to this and thinking, how do I incorporate this? And I like doing my HIIT workouts twice a week. Well, this is how I do it. I just, depending on how I'm feeling, like I've been quite sick quite a lot lately because the kids just bring home so many things. At least that's what I blame.
No, the kids have a cold. By the time they get to you, it's typhoid.
Oh yeah, like it's so frustrating. But yeah, we've
Absolutely.
gone through a bunch of stuff, and so because of that, I've been not obviously feeling as I completely miss my workouts because I know that's probably not a good idea to kind of like push the immune system in further when it's already dealing with that. And so I will do something really low intensity like that kin stretch stuff, which I'll link to, or just walking the dog because just getting outside, moving is just still really important. So that's how I see it.
See,
There's something every day, basically.
I've used yoga DVDs because I'm a barbarian. But
How dare you?
I know. But I've been using Rodney Yee's DVDs for 20 years, over 20 years, 25 years. Because I'm really less concerned with being a yogi than I am with the joint mobilization. So when they get into the whole draw the energy from the earth stuff, yeah. Tell me how I'm supposed to stretch, or just tell me what limb to move. But I find the more I do that, the better my joints feel.
Interesting.
So, or more regularly. Like I wouldn't just spend hours doing it. If it's 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week, that's perfect.
Yeah. And just not that I need to throw this caveat in, but you've already kind of said it, but it's like, obviously a lot of us who are, tuning into this podcast and, are running high intensity training businesses, personal training studios where they're selling something for people that don't do anything a lot of the time. They don't have time to do anything. So I get that. So we're really talking about, independent of everything else, everything being equal. If you had ample time, what would it look like to really look after yourself in full? Like that's kind of what we're saying here. So just to throw that out, I don't want people to feel alienated if that's their business focus,
Well, plus I have clients who go to Pilates classes, they go to yoga classes, they do other things.
This is very true. Yeah.
Rather than make those people my competitors by fighting for the client's time, yes, by all means, go ahead, do it. It's not you're coming to me once or twice a week. You may, if you have the time to do this stuff, great. So, again, an old mentality of physical culture, not just weight training.
Yeah, you make a really good point. Actually, you're totally right. Like, we do, we do masterminds twice a month now in the membership, and hearing from. Learning about the clientele of all of the different HIIT studio owners, and they're all, a lot of these, especially these, affluent, busy professional types, they are, like you say, they're doing multiple exercise modalities throughout the week, yoga, stretching classes, spinning, and then strength workouts. But the strength workouts, it being so efficient in the way most of us do it, does still really appeal to them because it's like, oh wait, I can still get my strength workout in. It's only 30 minutes,
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that is the beauty of it, right? You're not telling someone to do 6 days a week, double split workouts. That I always thought the real appeal to Nautilus fitness centers, high intensity training was minimal times a week, half hour at a time, meaningful, whether it was actually true failure or beyond or short of it, it's meaningful. You're not just pumping away and hoping that at the end of 20 minutes, you tired. I thought that was the big draw. But no one agreed with me. And they also, it's more dramatic to sell the idea of how brutal they push and the carpet time and how hard they push. I guess that's more dramatic a sell or more influencer friendly. But I always thought that was the main appeal to high intensity training. A couple times a week, limited amount of time, meaningful work, and then you can do whatever, get on with your week. So
Great. I love it. Yeah.
no one else agreed with me. So,
Well, I do. Let's do a quick time check. Maybe we can run for another 5 minutes and get another question in, Bill. But I think if you're up for it, we should probably do a part 2 to try and cover the rest of these questions because there's quite a lot more.
Okay.
So let's move on to. Go ahead.
No. Tell me what you have that's interesting.
I was going to look at. I just skipped through a few slides and I've got to full range versus stretching for flexibility. This is an interesting topic. So first bullet, maybe we can cover this slide and then wrap if that's okay.
Okay.
So all you need to do flexibility is a full range of motion with weights. Why do you need separate stretching? Oh, this is a good question, Bill.
Yeah, I made that up. I just wanted to make sure we talked about it.
Fair enough. Well, it's a great question I have.
So full range of motion for flexibility has been part of the HIT group think for what, 50 years? Sounds good, but it doesn't really hold up if you step outside of HIT. So for instance, the extreme joint ranges that I demonstrate in Joint Friendly Fitness and say to avoid them, that's not encouraging flexibility, that's encouraging joint laxity, right? So if a verbal picture, if you're doing dumbbell flies and your dumbbell flies on a bench and your arms break horizontal and the weights are heading to the floor and your shoulders are completely stretched out to their breaking point, that's not encouraging flexibility. That's encouraging joint laxity, which means the connective tissue in the shoulders gets stretched out, and eventually that turns into a problem, if not an immediate injury.
What kind of problem, just to be specific, just as an example?
Well, the shoulder becomes unstable. So in other words, the connective tissue gets stretched out, it doesn't snap back, and now instead of your humerus moving the way it's supposed to in your shoulder, now it starts getting impingements, inflammation, bursitis, arthritis, etc. Okay, so flexibility refers to the muscle, laxity refers to the joint, and generally joint laxity is not a good thing. It's to be avoided. The problem with testing for flexibility is it doesn't really distinguish between which part of that motion comes from the muscle being flexible and what comes from the joint being lax. So for instance, a sit and reach was a standard test for hamstring flexibility. You're sitting on the floor, knees are locked flat. You bring your hands towards your feet and they would measure where your hands were. The problem was you can be slouching your spine. There's a whole lot of joints in the way that could help you measure better. And A, that in itself is harmful, but B, your hamstrings might not have gotten any more flexible than prior to the test. You just tested better. Or for instance, if you can't, if this is as far as you can stretch in say a pec fly, and you improve to here, okay, that's an improvement. But that doesn't mean to go further back is better. All right. So there's a difference between the stretching that they do in physical therapy after an injury, where your range of motion is artificially limited by scar tissue and guarding, and going to an extreme. Like physical therapy only stretches you out to be within a normal range. Exceeding that range, especially with a weight, is simply not a good idea, and an easily documented bad idea from physical therapy textbooks, sports medicine, etc. The other problem with using a weight for stretching is the stretch reflex. So if you abruptly stretch a muscle beyond where it wants to go, the stretch reflex makes the muscle contract to protect itself. So if you're in the middle of a set of 10 and you take a couple of seconds to get that good stretch, well, it's activating the stretch reflex and actually making you less flexible. And that's even before we get to the effect on the joint. So the the standard, and again, this is not casual. This is stuff that's got its own set of documentation as to why to do it. Is the static stretching, right? You hold it, because if you hold it for 30 seconds, the muscle, it undermines the stretch reflex. All right. And the muscle has a chance to relax. Now, you interviewed a guy, I think his name was David Beam.
A long time ago, yeah.
Did a book on stretching and flexibility. And his name has showed up on some recent studies saying that full range strength training creates as good a gains as active stretching.
Interesting. Okay.
And I haven't read it because I know how I want to stretch people, and that's not going to be with weights.
That doesn't sound very open-minded, Phil.
No, it's not. Well, it's not. I absolutely acknowledge that it's not. But I would say with that is, I am not stretching myself or clients for the sake of testing better. I'm stretching for that immediate effect of relieving the muscle tension, correcting a postural deficit. Let me see what else is documented. And the cool down at the end of the workout. So the point is, again, the point of stretching isn't necessarily to test better; it's to feel better, right? If someone's shoulders are, or in this, if you're in that kyphotic rounded shoulder position, and you take a couple of minutes at the end of the workout to static stretch and that to counter that, yes, you may have to do it every workout because it's not a quick fix. They may not test better, but if they feel better from not being hunched over, I think that's good enough in the training context. And maybe if that bad posture hasn't settled into the joints, maybe you can correct it. Now, if you wait too long and now there's joint changes to accommodate posture, probably not. But again, that has to do with the life cycle of where the person is.
So you do feel like, full range strength training in itself is not sufficient for correcting certain maybe posture problems, or preventing them in the first place, and you need to do some kind of adjunctive stretching after workouts?
If we're going to reduce it to a one-liner, I would say yes.
Okay.
But again, if you take a person who has not trained,
sure,
and you train them on my optimal ranges, right, which are not extreme ranges, that person will test better on a flexibility test because,
of course,
they've gone from nothing to actively moving the muscle. I just don't think that if you have documented positions that set someone up for an injury, documented by sports medicine textbooks, not me, and you put a weight on them to force them into that position, you might get away with this for the workout, but in the long run, I don't think that's necessarily good for that person's joint.
Got it. Can you give us just very quickly, maybe one or two examples of the stretches you advocate and when to do them? And then obviously, if people want to learn more about this, they can buy a copy of this book. Here you go.
Which is actually, I only show 3 or 4 stretches in that. I show a calf stretch, stretch, and a pectoral stretch. Because frankly, if all people did was a calf stretch, a hamstring stretch, and a pectoral stretch, that would go pretty far towards feeling better. The hamstrings, because they're chronically tight on people, and when they're chronically tight, it tends to lead to low back problems.
Interesting.
Okay. Again, the calves also tend to be chronically tight. And if you want to run, walk, ride a bike, you do need to relieve the muscle tension in the calves. And then pectoral stretch, because most people nowadays are doing this in some fashion. It's funny, in the 80s, you would see older people with that kyphosis rounded shoulder posture. from a
Mm.
lifetime of standing in bad posture. Now you see high school kids with the kyphosis rounded shoulder because they've been doing this over monitors their whole life.
Yeah, it's scary. Yeah.
So I always include those 3 stretches at the end of a workout. Beyond that, maybe get into some piriformis stretches, hip, but those are the three go-to ones. Did I say 3 in here? Was it 4? I don't remember.
4,
But I
I think you
think
said.
4? Hamstring, pectoral, and calf. Nope, just 3.
Okay.
Well, as a place to start, I would start with those 3. As a trainer, I like to include them at the end of the workout because if somebody exerts their highest effort at the end of the workout and then they walk out and get into their car, depending on how susceptible they are to this, they might go faint, right? Because the blood is pooled, hasn't gotten back to their head. So I always include the stretching at the end of the workout because now the person has lied down, the blood has a chance to move around, and they've cooled down in front of me. So I know when they leave, they're feeling okay.
That's not a bad idea. I feel like I'm going to fall asleep at the wheel sometimes, Bill, after a heavy leg press.
But that's true. That's a legitimate, that is actually happening.
I wonder how many accidents occur as a result of this stuff.
Well, I don't know, but you know what? I noticed I didn't feel the consequences of that until I got old. Until I was around 50, I would be like every other HIT guy. My warm-up was changing into my workout clothes, first 4 reps of the warm-up, and then end of the workout, boom, I'm out. I hit 50 and all of a sudden that did not go so well. Like by the time I would drive home, I would feel fully nauseous. And I thought it's not enough carbohydrates, not enough water, it's not enough this. And I flipped open my old personal training textbooks. I got to the part about warm up and cool down. And I'm like, oh, here's the answer right here. I'm stopping too abruptly. But the consequences of stopping, it was always a mistake, but the consequences didn't show up until later.
Mm-hmm.
And your mileage may vary,
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think so. I think it's fair to say that the HIT community logged off about 40 minutes ago. That's okay.
No, they're throwing tomatoes and stuff at their screens.
Yeah. It's fascinating just listening to myself though. It's definitely changed my position on quite a few things. Bill, let's just put a pin in it and perhaps do a part 2 if you're open to that, or we can do the rest of the questions. Sure. But this has been awesome as always. I particularly enjoyed this one. Just so before we wrap up, what's the best place for people to find out more about you, but also get a copy of Joint Friendly Fitness as well?
So the best place would be the Amazon bio page, because that's where Joint Friendly Fitness and the Kindles and that's the one central spot, which is amazon.com/author/Bill DeSimone. And then the YouTube channel, which for some reason is Joint Friendly Fitness 8048. I don't know why.
We'll link all these up as well. Yeah.
In the coming year, we're gonna do more YouTube and less newsletters. I think people just don't like to read. People don't like to read writing.
Yeah. Well, there are audiences for both, but yeah, I think it's a great idea for you to invest in your YouTube channel. We've already talked about that quite a lot offline. Yeah, and look, there'll be obviously if you can't remember exactly the URL that Bill just described there will be links to Joint Friendly Fitness and Bill's website and YouTube, etc. Wherever you're watching or listening to this, so it will be on YouTube, it will be on the blog post over at highIntensityBusiness.com. Just search episode 441, and it will also be on wherever you listen to this podcast. There should be the show notes on the app as well, so you can find links there as well. Bill, thanks so much. Really enjoyed this, and we'll schedule part 2. And for everyone listening, to get the show notes for this episode, please go to highIntensityBusiness.com, search episode 441, and until next time, thank you very much for listening. This episode is brought to you by Imagine Strength, your go-to for safe, simple, and effective high-intensity training equipment. Growing a successful high-intensity training business requires workout equipment that's not only high quality, but also intelligently designed to fit the unique needs of your studio. And that's where Imagine Strength comes in. Drawing on the wisdom of the legendary Arthur Jones, Imagine Strength has crafted a groundbreaking line of fitness equipment that's as affordable as it is efficient, giving your studio the upgrade it needs without breaking the bank. The team at Imagine Strength breathes HIT. Their passion for high-intensity training shines through in their designs, which they've consistently refined and innovated for optimum effectiveness and user experience. From my personal experience at Rec, I can attest to the careful consideration and craftsmanship that goes into every single piece. My Imagine Strength workout was absolutely brutal, in a good way, of course. Now, what makes Imagine Strength truly stand out? They have innovative equipment tailored for the unique needs of HIT studios, affordable and efficient designs, lowering the barriers to entry for a HIT business, continuous innovation and refinement ensuring your studio stays ahead of the curve. Founder Jeff Turner and his team are dedicated to moving the HIT industry forward and making strength training accessible to more people than ever before. Here's how you get started. Number 1, visit imaginestrength.com. Number 2, discuss your specific needs with the team. And number 3, select the equipment that will propel your business to the next level. Head to imaginestrength.com today and give your HIT business the Imagine Strength edge. Be part of the HIT revolution and see firsthand how their unique equipment can transform your studio's workout experience. Elevate your HIT business with Imagine Strength.
Let's go.